You search for clarity. We all do. But what if clarity brought loneliness? What if the very tools that promised truth left you exiled from comfort, from belonging, even from love? What if logic could heal the world and also shatter your heart? Bertrand Russell lived this paradox. His life was a struggle between the cool precision of reason and the wild, unpredictable nature of being human. Through his victories and his wounds, through his courage and his doubts, you may discover something of your own search for meaning. This is not just the story of a philosopher. It is the story of a boy who lost his parents before he could even grasp what death meant. Russell's father died when he was 4. His mother was taken from him even earlier, leaving him with only faint shadows of memory and the ache of absence. He grew up in silence, in a household ruled by strict Victorian order and unyielding religious discipline. His grandmother, though sternly devoted to morality, left little space for tenderness. Affection was scarce, joy was rationed, and questions, especially those that challenged faith, were often met with disapproval. And yet in that cold silence, a hidden door opened. He found salvation in numbers. For Russell, mathematics was not merely a subject to study, it was a refuge from chaos, a sanctuary against despair. In the certainty of a proof, he discovered something no tragedy could touch. Equations did not betray him, theorems did not die. Where the world around him was unpredictable and cruel, mathematics whispered promises of permanence. It was not only knowledge, it was solace. In the symmetry of equations, he found a harmony that his own life denied him. Every formula was a reminder that truth could be clean, precise, and eternal. The infinite did not terrify him, it comforted him. For within its vastness, he sensed a place where his grief might dissolve. This fragile refuge, this early grasp of certainty, became the foundation upon which one of the most ambitious minds of the 20th century would be built. For Russell, the pursuit of truth was not an abstract exercise, it was survival, a way of making sense of suffering. But destiny had other plans. The same world that gave him logic would later test the very limits of his faith in it, and the boy who sought comfort in numbers would one day confront the unsettling truth that not even mathematics could silence the questions of the human heart. Raised under the shadow of religion, Russell grew restless. Faith demanded surrender, a quiet acceptance of truths handed down from scripture and tradition. But Russell could not surrender. He felt within him a gnawing resistance to authority, a refusal to be satisfied with answers that rested only on reverence. Where others saw comfort in belief, he saw only unanswered questions. Faith asked him to stop searching. But Russell could not stop. He needed proof, reasons carved in clarity, arguments that could withstand doubt. And so, like Socrates wandering the Athenian agora, he began to ask the most dangerous of questions: what can we truly know? Yet, unlike Socrates, who trusted the living exchange of dialogue, Russell placed his trust elsewhere, in the abstract language of symbols, in the rigid scaffolding of logic. He believed that human thought, if stripped of vagueness, could stand unshaken. That philosophy, when built not on emotion or tradition, but on proofs and precision, could offer a certainty deeper than faith. It was with this conviction that he joined Alfred North Whitehead, embarking on a task so audacious it seemed almost mythic, to demonstrate that all of mathematics, the very language of science and certainty, could be reduced to pure logic. Their work, Principia Mathematica, was not merely a book. It was a cathedral of reason, each page a stone laid with painstaking care, each proof a prayer to clarity. Thousands of pages, years of devotion, an attempt not simply to solve problems, but to rebuild knowledge from its very foundations. For Russell, every symbol carried a weight heavier than ink. It carried the hope that truth could be secured once and for all. But beneath this triumph lay a wound unhealed. Was Russell's quest for certainty an act of discovery, or was it a desperate shield against despair? Was he seeking eternal truth, or was he erecting walls to keep chaos at bay? Walls that might one day collapse under the force of life's unpredictability. Could logic truly explain everything, or was his grand project merely an elegant fortress against grief and doubt? The cracks, as inevitable as they were invisible at first, would soon appear. And when they did, they would not only challenge Russell's philosophy, they would pierce the very refuge he had built for his soul. Russell believed, with the fervor of a man who had suffered too much chaos, that logic could hold the universe together. To him, pure reasoning was not just a tool of mathematics, it was a promise. Somewhere hidden in the architecture of proofs, there had to be a final foundation. A bedrock untouched by grief, untouched by contradiction, something eternal upon which human knowledge could securely stand. If such a foundation could be found, perhaps the world itself could be tamed. But then came a revelation that shook not only Russell, but the entire world of mathematics. Gödel's incompleteness, theorems. With a stroke of brilliance, Gödel revealed that within any logical system powerful enough to describe mathematics, there would always be truths that could not be proven within that system. There would always be doors that reason could not unlock. Certainty itself. Russell's lifelong refuge was no more than a mirage. The effect was devastating. Imagine devoting your life to constructing a cathedral of perfect reason, stone upon stone, proof upon proof, believing it indestructible only to discover that beneath its soaring arches lay a foundation of shifting sand. Every theorem, every symbol, every carefully laid argument suddenly seemed less eternal, more fragile, as though the very thing Russell sought to escape, the uncertainty of existence, had returned, disguised within the heart of logic itself. Was Russell's dream collapsing before his eyes? Was his quest for certainty doomed from the very beginning? And if logic, the sharpest instrument of the human mind, could not save us from doubt, then what could? Perhaps love, perhaps courage, or perhaps nothing at all. Godel had not merely written a theorem, he had placed a crack in the mirror of reason, a reminder that even truth itself had limits. For Russell, it was not only an intellectual defeat, it was an existential wound. For a man who built his reputation on the cool architecture of logic, Russell's heart pulsed with a dangerous kind of chaos. He was no detached scholar staring at abstractions from an ivory tower. He was a man who threw himself into love with abandon. He married 4 times, into affairs that consumed him, burned him, and sometimes broke him beyond recognition. His private life, like his public one, was full of turbulence. Proof that even the greatest champion of reason could not reason his way out of desire. To Russell, love was not trivial, nor was it an ornament of life to be indulged when convenient. He saw it as the single most vital force binding human beings to one another, the one fragile hope against the cruelty of indifference. Love is wise. Hatred is foolish, he once wrote. Not as a platitude, but as a creed. For Russell, love was the antidote to despair, the only power strong enough to redeem a world fractured by war, greed, and grief. Without it, even logic was hollow. And yet, in his own life, love betrayed him as often as it sustained him. He chased it as though it were a proof waiting to be discovered, but what he found was heartbreak, jealousy, disillusionment. Each relationship seemed to reopen the wound of his childhood loss, reminding him that certainty, in the heart no less than in reason, was always beyond reach. The paradox was undeniable. The world's most rigorous logician could not solve the riddle of the human heart. Was he then truly free in his pursuit of passion? Or was his search for love merely another reflection of his search for clarity, a desperate attempt to impose order and meaning upon a world that resisted simplicity at every turn? Love for Russell was both salvation and torment, wisdom and folly, liberation and chain. But Russell's greatest battles did not remain confined to the arena of his heart. Beyond his private struggles, a far larger war awaited him, one fought not in the chambers of affection, but on the stage of the world itself. Russell was never satisfied with confining philosophy to quiet lecture halls or dusty libraries. For him, philosophy was not a parlor game of abstractions, not an intellectual puzzle to be admired from a distance. It was a living force, a demand placed upon the conscience, a call to action. To know the truth and to remain still in the face of injustice was to betray both reason and humanity. When World War I erupted, Russell's voice rose against the tide of blind patriotism. He declared the war a madness, a slaughter driven by pride and fear rather than necessity. For this defiance he paid dearly. The gates of Cambridge closed against him. His academic career, so carefully built, was dismantled by his refusal to remain silent. He was fined. He was dismissed. And when his protests persisted, the state finally caged him, throwing him into prison. Yet even there he refused to surrender. From his cell he continued to write, words flowing through stone as though the walls themselves were transparent. Prison, for Russell, was not a tomb, it was a pulpit. And still, decades later, when the world seemed to teeter on the edge of annihilation under the shadow of nuclear weapons, Russell's voice had not dimmed. Nearly 90 years old, frail in body but unbroken in spirit, he marched in the streets, his white hair a banner of defiance. While others sought comfort in silence, he confronted the madness head-on, insisting that the most dangerous weapon was not the bomb itself, but humanity's refusal to think clearly. For Russell, clarity was never neutral. It demanded courage. If reason revealed war to be irrational, then silence was not wisdom, but complicity. He risked his livelihood, his freedom, his reputation, and even the fragile peace of his later years. Because to him truth was not something to be owned and admired like a private jewel. It was a responsibility, a burden that pressed itself upon the shoulders of those who dared to see clearly. But the price of truth is never cheap. Every stand he took cost him something: comfort, security, belonging, and yet he bore that price willingly, believing that the cost of silence would be far greater still. Russell's life mirrored his philosophy: bold, fragile, relentless. He gave us not final certainty, but a way of living in the absence of it. He taught us to doubt bravely, for doubt is not weakness, it is the beginning of wisdom. He taught us to love recklessly, for love is the most rational response to a world of suffering. He taught us to act when reason demands it, for philosophy without courage is a hollow game. In this way, he was a modern Socrates, asking questions others feared, standing firm when silence was easier. And like Socrates, he left not tidy answers, but the courage to keep asking. So what about you? How much truth are you willing to bear? How much love are you willing to risk? How much courage are you willing to live with? Bertrand Russell reminds us that clarity is not something given, it is something chosen. And in choosing it, you may find not only truth, but the power to transform the world. This is his legacy, and perhaps it could be yours too. To doubt is to awaken. And now I ask you, what questions haunt you? What truths do you fear? Share them in the comments, because philosophy begins not in answers but in dialogue, and the dialogue continues with you.